Good day, everyone. My name is Simon Putt, and it's my great pleasure to introduce my colleagues Craig Murrin
Morning.
and Chris Williams.
Afternoon.
Good day to you, gentlemen. Are we bright and breezy today?
Yes,
Very
fantastic.
well.
Excellent. Okay. Well, together we are financial planners with GWM USA. We represent the West Coast team, and our responsibility is to provide financial planning advice and solutions for residents in the United States. And I'm proud to say that collectively, in aggregate, we bring over 50 years of experience in the financial services industry.
Wow.
I know.
Makes you feel old.
Despite our youthful looks, that is a true statement.
That's fantastic.
Now, we have been, as some of people will know who've been watching these, been producing a number of video podcasts dealing with aspects of financial thinking. Each week we look at a different topic and have a quasi socially distanced roundtable discussion about that topic. This is our 5th episode. And just so you know, you can find all of those episodes on GWM USA's website. In the second video that we produced, we talked about golden rules of financial planning. And one of the first of those rules that we talked about was the importance of insurance, by which we mean life insurance, critical illness, living benefits, however you define it. And we'll come on to that in a little bit. For very good reason. That was one of the most important and foremost topics that we discussed. And that's what we want to dive into as far as this episode is concerned. What we're going to look at is ways to try and demystify the topic, talk about what it is, who should be having it, what it looks like, how it works for people, and try and provide some guidance and clarity on an area that, I'll be perfectly honest with you, gentlemen, if you start talking about insurance, a lot of people will glaze over. But at the same time, it's a topic that just about everyone recognizes is incredibly important. And I think a lot of people out there think, well, it's one of those things I've got to do. I've got to tick it off the jobs done list and, make sure at least I've got that in place. But it's, getting around to it or understanding which is the right way forward. And so some of those ideas that we want to address in that video. But before we sort of get into how it might work for you and what a policy looks like, let's just take a step back. Let's go back to basic principles and just try and understand what we mean by insurance. And Chris, I think you're going to pick that up for us.
Insurance, in many different definitions, is a tool to protect yourself and your assets. Like when I sit down with a client, when we all sit down with a client, the first thing we try and understand is the client's position right now and also their kind of stage in life. Typically, as we go through life, people become dependent on us. And likewise, we become dependent on things. We become dependent on jobs. We become dependent on incomes. We become dependent on property. And often, if we disregard the consequence of losing the things we're dependent on, things can get bad quite quick. By having insurance, which in this day and age is open to everyone, it doesn't have to be the wealthy anymore. We can protect ourselves and our loved ones and also our assets in times of injury, unemployment, long-term sickness, and sometimes even death. As I think for us as professionals that help people with their financial planning, investment planning, we'd be remiss if protection wasn't one of the first things we addressed and maybe challenged as well. We challenged that belief. Do I really need it? Do I really need to protect myself? Often when we lay out the scenario and we lay out what the reality without insurance can look like, in the wrong situation, the wrong context, suddenly it becomes crucial.
Yeah.
I don't know. Would you call that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't pay for insurance or don't like insurance until it's too late, or don't realize they need it until it's too late, for sure.
Do you feel that's because it's not a tangible thing? Like, because it's difficult to appreciate something when you're putting money into something and you don't necessarily see a return.
Well, certainly with life insurance, if you buy life insurance, you're not going to benefit from it because it's life insurance. So you're buying it for somebody else to benefit. So that is obviously going to leave a bit of a taste in someone's mouth if they're forking out however many hundreds of dollars or pounds, whatever it is, on a monthly basis. to something that they will never get benefit from. So maybe that's a thought process in that person's mind why they wouldn't do it because of that. I don't, it depends on the reasons for why you're setting your life insurance up, I think.
Yeah, I think part of it is also that for a lot of people, it looks like a very remote concept in terms of, relevance, particularly with younger people who are fit, well, strong, have a perfectly clean health record. It becomes one of those topics, well, I'll worry about this tomorrow. It's not something that's relevant for me today. And by the way, I'm very healthy. My family's always been healthy. I don't need to worry so much about critical illness. And so, unfortunately, life doesn't always work that neatly. And I guess, one way to think about insurance, which is, I'm not going to say it's a problem, but, it's something that we need to get our heads around, is that ideally, you never need to call upon your insurance. Hopefully we'll all live nice long lives, won't get ill. And, the insurance is something that's just there in the background. But the reality is, despite all the period when you haven't needed insurance, when that policy does become needed, it becomes really needed. And certainly the absence of that policy would be more meaningful than actually the meaning it can have by being there.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think the worst case scenario that happens when you don't have a policy when a loved one goes is awful, and trying to deal with that stress without having that protection in place makes things 10 times worse. So yeah, definitely. It's education, I think, certainly educating the individuals, educating people, and helping them understand the benefits and the good side of life insurance, and looking at it as a planning tool rather than a cost, if that makes sense. So
should we dig into a little bit more definition in terms of what we are meaning by life insurance, or when we talk about living benefits? I mean, Craig, do you want to pick that up?
Yeah, certainly with the difference between sort of here and in the UK and the UAE, where I was for a long time before, there's a lot of different policies out there. In the US, they don't call critical illness protection, for example. They call it living benefits, which is quite good, I think, because it benefits whilst you're still living. So straight away there, someone can see if they get life insurance with living benefits, then they potentially could benefit from having that life insurance policy in force. There's lots of different riders here. So really just to look at it very quickly, in the UK and certainly in the Middle East, it was life insurance and critical illness. That's your policy and that's what you get. That's pretty much it. Here, there are lots of different riders that you can add on to it. You can add on to long-term care. You can add on to its sort of accelerated death benefits. You can have your living benefits and things like that, so that if you take an insurance policy out, you are able to utilize it if you are diagnosed with cancer, for whatever type of cancer that gives you maybe 3 months or 6 months to live. You could ring your insurance company and say, hey, I've been given this time to live. I'd like to make a claim on my life insurance policy. You're not dead yet, so you get to actually benefit that with that money and benefit from your insurance. So you can utilize it and enjoy the last 6 months. What if you've been told that you've only got a couple of weeks, months, or years to live? Why sort of sit and not enjoy those? Enjoy the last bit of time with your friends, your family, your loved ones, and use the money from the insurance policy to do that.
When, in your opinion, would you say is the best time to start thinking about insurance? Now, I'm sure every time is the perfect time, but at what stage of life do you think it becomes crucial?
Oh, I mean, personally, as a representative that sells it, I think it's something you should be thinking about straight away. But it all depends on who's in your family, I think. What's the reason you need it, or what's the reason you want to set life insurance up? Have a look at that. Does anyone depend on you financially? If you've got anybody depending on you financially, then 100% you should have life insurance.
Yeah, I think another way to almost make the same point, Craig, is it's never cheaper than today. We're going to talk about pricing a little while, and I'm sure people are aware that the younger and healthier you are, the cheaper your policy is going to be. So the ability to lock in at pricing, which can then last you for 10, 20, 30, even 40 years is enormous. You're locking in that pricing today while you might be in your 20s, as opposed to...
We said this last week on last week's episode with you with your boys, 18 and 19 years old, looking at setting them up now because they're going to be crazy cheap, and that's very true.
That's exactly it. And, you know, as I mentioned last week, thanks for reminding me, Craig. Yeah, if I set up my boys who are now 18 and 19, you know, with 35-year policies, then, you know, that's pricing that's fixed for the full 35 years, no matter what happens to them.
Yeah.
During the 35 years, you know, if they do suddenly start developing health problems, you know, their pricing still stays the same. Whereas if they try to take out a policy in their 30s and maybe had some you know, health issues in the preceding years, then their policy gets a lot more expensive. So, you know, simple rule of thumb, I always say to people, the younger you are, the healthier you are, there's no better time to take out some insurance.
And here's a question to both of you. How all the time, I'm sure you get it, I do, people ask me, how much insurance do I need? Now, that can be answered in so many different ways, and I've got ways that I sort of explain to people, you know, in a perfect world, this is what you could have, and da-da-da-da-da. But how is it you explain to people or help people understand or calculate how much insurance they need?
Well, I think one of the first things to bring to people's attention is that there's no, or at least there should not be, some kind of one-size-fits-all type approach to this. It's not just about picking round numbers, you know, that person needs $500,000 of life insurance and 200,000 of critical illness, or whatever the policy structure is. You know, each case needs to be looked at on its own merits, and each case, be it an individual or a couple with children, have got something very specific to bring to determine what is the right amount of insurance for them. So, you know, it could be, you know, the relative earning power of a married couple. You know, if they're both, if for example, one of the couple is financially dependent on the other, then there needs to be a sum of money so that non-income earning spouse has got something to support them after the breadwinner has passed away. Similarly, if there are debts like a mortgage, I mean, what is the amount of mortgage? What other debts might there be? Do the couple want to leave something behind for financial education, for university, for their children? So I think it's a case of going line by line through a series of items to see what is relevant, what's the likely costing going to be, and coming to an answer that way. And just to be very clear, then not just pulling a high number, you can then net out whatever financial strength they've already got. For example, existing assets, you know, wealth, that, you know, would alleviate the cushion anyway.
I think it's definitely a stage of life conversation. I've always assessed it like that. And like I said earlier, you tend to pick up dependence as you go through life, and likewise, you tend to become dependent on things as well. So you often lead into that question of, how would you feel if you didn't have this? How would you feel if you did lose this? And I think I always think insurance and protection is almost exactly the same thing. So when we talk about, and I don't know if all the terms are well known. So we said you can insure yourself if you get sick, you know, and you can insure a house. You can insure lots of different elements. I think there's a common perception, life insurance is the only thing. Your life is the only thing you can insure. But I would often say it's actually just one piece of the puzzle in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
that's a very good point. And it's sort of bringing us around to the idea of what types of people should have insurance.
Yeah.
And we're talking about, you know, circumstances there.
Yeah.
The way I would typically approach it is everyone needs some kind of insurance solution, but then it's, you know, then fine tuning in terms of what is actually the right way forward. You know, so for example, if it was a single person with no dependents, no debts, then, you know, you could begin to make a case that life insurance is not a big priority there. But then, you know, the kind of cases that we've all been talking about where it's a married couple with children, well, yeah, clearly there's some kind of protection solution there. And be it the breadwinner or both partners, they need to be looking at some kind of insurance. But I think what's also incredibly relevant for everyone is having something that's there for protection against a critical illness, or, you know, something that happens out of the blue. And to that end, you know, we just look at statistics that make this so incredibly relevant for just about everyone, no matter how healthy we consider ourselves, and no matter how young and fit and with a clean bill of health. I was looking at some statistics from the American Cancer Society, and they say 1 in 3 women in the United States will develop cancer at some time in their life, and 1 in 2 men will develop cancer at some
Yeah.
time in their life. That's pretty scary.
Crazy, isn't
And
it?
it is. And 1.8 million people in the US are diagnosed with cancer every year. That's pretty gloomy.
Just a quick statistic, not statistic, just a quick question. And if you're watching, think about it yourself. But you guys, how many people do you know in your immediate family or immediate friends group that have gone through some sort of cancer? I mean, I can lose count on both my hands of how many people I know that I've been connected to that have been diagnosed with it. Sadly, have not survived it and have survived it. So there's certainly positives. But what about you, Chris?
I'm sure I have members. I'm sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's always that thing. Slightly, it's never going to happen to you, is it? And
well,
I think that's what.
Think, yeah.
And this is that thing. Everyone's invincible, and part of what's challenging in some respects in what we do is to challenge people and have to be a bit direct and say, that this can happen to you. And there is sometimes, I think, a mental barrier there.
I'll tell you one area where I think you can have some kind of mental block. It's quite interesting you use that expression, Chris, because I think you're right. And one area is in a family setup where there's the income earner and a non-income earner. You might say the stay-at-home spouse. This often gets missed. Quite rightly, the income earner thinks that they should rightly have some insurance because obviously if they pass away, the non-working spouse would clearly value that kind of financial support that would be left behind. But let's have a quick think about what happens if the non-income earner is diagnosed with a serious case of cancer. This is going to have some kind of financial impact. We've talked about the costs of cancer, the kind of healthcare bills that can be racked up. Someone's got to pay for all of that. And okay, it might be affordable for the person that's working and earning, but it's still going to be a lump out of that family's financial picture. So you can quickly see it becomes very valuable for even the non-income earning spouse, the stay-at-home spouse, whatever expression you want to use, to have some kind of critical illness policy themselves so that, God forbid, they do become diagnosed with a condition. Well, there'll be some kind of payout which would at least pay for their cost of treatment and rehabilitation, maybe even pay for additional support for looking after the children, whatever the specific case may be. That's clearly going to be a valuable policy for both partners to have.
A lot of people don't take that into account. They don't think, if they're the breadwinner, they think if they're not gone, that's the financial problem. But if they lose the other one, then there's a lot of things to factor in for that for sure.
I mean, I return to a point that we've made. I think a starting assessment is that just about everyone should have some kind of living benefits or critical illness policy. And then the analysis is, well, if not, why not? I mean, okay, there are some people who are unfortunate enough because of their health situation, they aren't able to get a policy, but at least it should be explored. And I would suggest that the majority of people should be able to have some access to setting up a policy which won't cost a lot, but which will clearly be hugely meaningful against the kind of statistics that we previously discussed in terms of, how prevalent cancer is.
Yeah, there is a policy over in the US here, which is called a guaranteed issue policy. Minimal cover, so I think the maximum cover you can have is say $50,000, but it's a guaranteed policy. So no matter what pre-existing or things have happened to you, that they guarantee they'll give you this much cover. The premium might be higher if you've got pre-existing conditions or if you've gone through things in the past, but you can get insurance to give you some minimal level of cover. God forbid something was to happen to you, and if you've already gone through something. So I do like the fact that there is an option for those people that may have been diagnosed with cancer and didn't have insurance in place and now understand the importance of it and want to try and go out there and get cover. They are able to.
Exactly. So, it comes back to a core point that we're making, that just about everyone should be looking at some kind of insurance solution. And let's be very clear, and this is where our job is important, understanding what that right policy is, rather than just going and get something off the shelf, and we can all do that. And unfortunately, there have been a lot of insurance solutions set up which aren't really properly tailored to the individuals or the family's needs. The real value of an advisor comes in properly identifying what is the situation, what does need to be protected, what is the appropriate amount, how does this itself fit in with the family finances, so that then in the end, everyone has peace of mind and comfort that this is bang on, spot on, the right policy for the people who are to be insured.
Yeah. Yeah. And something else to factor in, as an expat living overseas, no matter what country you're living in, if God forbid something was to happen to you, do you want your body going back to the UK? Because that's not cheap. Repatriation costs. Yeah. So that's something also to factor in when looking at your life insurance, is where do you want to be buried? And do you want your family and friends to have to front that cost? I know there's a lot of young people living around the world as an expat and not even probably thinking about something as far forward as what would happen if they were to die. Where would their body go? So that's something to factor in, I think, when speaking to certain clients.
Yeah, and equally, for people who are resident in the United States, to have a half decent quality funeral and burial arrangement, you're looking at about $10,000 to $15,000.
Yeah.
Now that can either come out of the person's estate, which is a little bit harsh on the beneficiaries who should be receiving that inheritance, or equally, you can build that into your policy. Just have that extra $10,000 to $15,000 of coverage, so that the cost of the kind of send off that you would like would be automatically covered.
Yeah,
no, I completely agree. Do you think we do enough as society to bring this to people's attention? Just what you said then about a body returning home if the worst were to happen. How many people, expatriates, are aware of that problem?
I mean, if you're asking we, as in the three of us, I think I try and do, certainly with my clients, enough. But yeah, I don't think enough people are aware of. I mean,
we as in the greater we, as in the media, as in do we as a culture bring this to people's attention enough? I could reference again, I think we spoke before we started recording about the fires in California and people without the right insurance being left devastated.
Yeah.
Were they aware ahead of time about the dangers they were putting themselves in by not having protection?
I think so. I think a lot of people just think it will never happen to them, and live their life like that and don't worry about these things until it's too late. And that's, hindsight's wonderful, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. My opinion is that a lot of people know insurance, know it's there, know what it's supposed to do, and can see how it could be relevant for them. But it's an issue in taking that leap. And I've been working in different jurisdictions, as you guys have, that we've talked to lots and lots of people who want to have insurance who don't have it. So clearly there are a lot of people out there who don't have it, and everyone's got a reason for not having it. It could be genuine ignorance, it could be cost, it could be procrastination, it could be, well, I'm okay, I'm healthy and well, and my house hasn't burned down yet, so they just sort of shelve it to another day. Not particularly helpful or constructive, of course.
No.
What we have to do is make it today's business. And, if we have a list of jobs to do, a to-do list with boxes to be ticked, then, this is just a box to tick. Get your insurance in place and then you're done.
You got that peace of mind.
Wait for peace of mind, exactly. It's there, it's in place. You don't have to worry about it. And you have that, you can sleep easier at night in the knowledge you have got the right kind of protection against an emergency, which, as I can say, hopefully will never happen, or will be very, very distant in terms of when it happens, but at least it's there and you'll sleep well at night.
In the process of sitting down with somebody and first starting to take their finances and their investment seriously, when should we be having this conversation? When should the issue of protection be coming up?
I think that's the first question when financial planning. If you're looking at it holistically, which is what we try to do as financial planners and investment advisors, I think the insurance is the first thing, especially, if you sit down when they're married, 2 kids, that kind of thing, and it's all well and good looking at their investments, what they're saving, how's your retirement, but you've got to look at the worst case scenario and what happens if you're not here tomorrow. Have you got enough saved? Have you got Probably not if you're just starting out. So I think the insurance is one of the keys and the foundations to financial planning. So it should be the first thing to be brought up.
Totally agree. I completely agree with that. It's front and center in terms of understanding someone's financial situation. I'm sure we've all experienced it. We've worked with individuals and families who get in touch. They want to look into saving for retirement or university. They want to think about investing, wealth, growth, all these great things. And of course, that's good stuff. That's important. And we can certainly work with them on that. But the fact of the matter is that if something tragic happened out of the blue, which would have a big impact on the finances, then, that wealth would generally go out the window. Great chunks of it are going to be spent just to deal with that emergency situation. And it's such an easy fix. Have a nice, affordable insurance policy so that you've got that huge barrier of support while your wealth can then continue to grow in the way that you would like it to.
Yeah. And you can also utilize insurance policies to pay any liabilities that you're coming up on, any tax liabilities. I know a lot of people here in the US utilize on the higher net worth side of things, ILITs and things like that, to basically pay your tax bill when you're gone so that your family can carry on with the wealth that you've accumulated over time. So it's not always a negative conversation about life insurance. It's more of just the understanding and education. And then once the client understands what they could have, hopefully then they will make the decision, or the right decision, to then set the policy up for their family, or for whatever reason they're setting it up.
And I think there's an important point there that actually, this is a very positive thing to be doing. And I've always found it to be a very positive and constructive dialogue with families, with individuals, to the extent that, they're grateful, thankful that they've got this in place, that, their family won't have to struggle if the breadwinner passes away, or, there'll be some kind of financial impact from an illness. It's a very positive and constructive thing to be doing.
For sure. And I think this brings nicely into having insurance and being able to make a claim on it, and our experiences with clients, and how much of a positive impact life insurance has had, and negative as well, because I have got an personal experience where it didn't quite work. But one of the times one of my clients was diagnosed with cancer, we got the payment out, $500,000 paid out within 23 days, so that they could cover all of their treatment, and they didn't have to worry about life. It's a very stressful time when one of your family members gets diagnosed with cancer. So for you to then have to be stressing, okay, how are we going to pay our bills, especially if that person is the main income earner in your house? So that was such a good experience, and it really makes me feel good about my job when my clients are able to utilize the policy we put in place and it benefits them. I remember sitting down with my client's husband, and he just hugged me because I pushed and told them they needed this insurance. And he wasn't really up for it. And he just said, I'm so thankful that you did this and you made me get that policy in place.
Yeah, now we can genuinely look ourselves in the mirror, if we fancy doing that, and feel good about what we're doing. We are genuinely doing something beneficial for people's lives.
How much do you think that peace of mind is worth, in a way? So just telling that story now, it had quite a powerful effect on me. When the worst were to happen, by taking that stress off the table, how much is that worth to somebody?
It's priceless. I think it's priceless.
You can't monetize it, I think.
And on the back of that, my
exactly, priceless.
Yeah, my own mother's insurance sadly didn't pay out due to a discrepancy on the application form when my dad was completing it. But it's vital that when you are setting up insurance, that you are open and honest on the application form. Don't try and lie about something because you think, oh, they're going to charge me more, or they're not going to cover me. Because if you lie on the application, or you're not honest on the application, the insurance company will find out in the end, and they just won't pay.
I just want to pick up on that point also, and I totally agree with all of that, Craig, but just also come back to what we were talking about in terms of our experience as advisors and seeing the kind of impact it can have on people. I'm going to slightly flip the coin around because I've worked on a lot of insurance solutions with clients, with individuals, with families, and I'm pleased to say that to this point in time, none of those insurance policies have needed to be invoked. I haven't had a case where someone passed away or was diagnosed, but at least they've got the peace of mind that the protection is placed. I've certainly worked with colleagues in the past and seen firsthand how, an individual passed away, leaving behind a daughter. There was a $500,000 payout to support the daughter through her education needs and provide something for the mother. I've seen cases where someone was diagnosed with cancer and the payout was clearly life-changing in terms of what they could afford for medical care and treatment and adjustments to home. But flipping that coin around, equally, very aware of a case in recent times where there was an individual, a gentleman, who was regularly advised by his advisor to put some life insurance in place, and for whatever reason, just didn't get round to it, whether he was reluctant or just didn't find the time or opportunity to do so. He never had that insurance in place. You can probably guess what happened next. Unfortunately, had a heart attack, dropped straight away, and passed away, and left behind a wife and 2 children.
And he was quite healthy, right?
He was in good shape. Yeah, no, he would have had a clean case, at least outwardly. Yeah. He would have appeared to have had a clean case. Left behind a wife and 2 children, and I'm not exaggerating by saying that the wife literally had to go around to friends to ask for money, to beg for money, just to be able to get by, to then think about, repatriating, getting home, getting the children back into new schools. It was a desperate situation, and it could have been so easily fixed and addressed by that guy simply having an insurance policy. Wouldn't have cost him very much, but it would have clearly left behind a meaningful amount.
And that's it doesn't cost that much.
That's one of the perceptions. If you ever hear, why shouldn't I get insurance? Cost comes up.
I
think
all the time comes up. Yeah, I got some a bit of an example, but really, if you want to have life insurance, then it depends on how much you either want to spend or how much cover you need. You work out on that. If you've got a budget of $20 a month, whatever, then fine, get as much insurance as you can for $20 a month. But for an example, a 40-year-old healthy male here in Nevada, for a 20-year term policy for $250,000 worth of cover would be about $42 a month. And that works out, I think, to around about $1.50, so $1.40 a day, which is...
So a quarter of a Starbucks.
Exactly. I can go and spend $8 on a coffee and on a sandwich every morning for breakfast, and I could have $1 million for my Starbucks for cover for insurance. So yeah, it's not expensive. $1 a day almost for $250,000 worth of cover.
I'm lucky to say I've never had anyone need to claim on their insurance yet. But what I can say is that the amount of goodwill and genuine gratitude I receive when people sit down with me and we're spending the first long part of the conversation saying, before we talk about investing, we need to talk about protection. I found that's generated quite a lot of goodwill, because if we're doing our jobs right, protecting them should be the first thing we approach. So I'd encourage anyone that is looking to speak to someone about investing their money, make sure you're speaking to someone who's looking at your entire situation, not just that one part.
I totally agree with that.
I think that's a strong and concise message to end on. What we hope we've done in this video is try and demystify this topic of insurance. Everyone knows it's out there, but not everyone really understands what it's about, what it would look like for them, how it's relevant for them. And, we're here to help people on that. And we encourage people to reach out to us, to ask questions. There's no such thing as a bad question in this topic because it's such an important thing to be thinking about. Yeah. And we're here to answer those questions. So please do share your thoughts with us, and please let us know if there's anything that you think we've missed. And please do keep checking us out on our videos. As I said, our back catalogue of videos can be found on the GWM USA website, and we're here to continue to help and advise.
And likewise, any subjects you would like us to cover in the future, please let us know. We generally enjoy doing this. It is our jobs. And we'd like to engage the community around us as much as possible. So any other ideas, please let us know.
Good stuff. Well, thanks ever so much, guys.
Thank you.
All right, pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Take care.